Hi, this is James Zhang, and today we're going to be talking about multifamily refinances. Seems like in the past week, a lot of people have been calling in. They've seen interest rates go down, like essentially 80 basis points from the beginning of this year. 10-year Treasury is around 1% right now, and they keep asking me, should I refi my property, my multifamily property? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through some of the case studies that recent deals we've closed, and then also the impact of refinances on people's property when they go to sell the property. And then if you do decide to do a refinance, what is the cost? And so a little bit about my background: born and raised in Houston, Texas, went to school at UT Austin, have lived in DFW since 2006. Started in commercial real estate really as an underwriter, loan underwriter for GE Capital. Did that for about 10 years. And then the past 5 years have been really focused on multifamily. Done about 750 million across 125 properties the last 5 years, and have invested in about 25, 26 properties, totaling over 6,000 units here in Texas. So here I just made a simple chart, right? So should I refinance my property? Let's just start on the yes side. Number one is your hold period, right? So based on where you are today, you plan on holding this property for more than 3 years. Number two, you completed a large value add already. And now based off the LTV versus the appraised value. So how much equity do you have in the property? There's a large amount of equity that is untapped. Number three, your current loan is recourse, and you just want to get off of recourse and move into non-recourse, or your property couldn't even qualify for Fannie and Freddie beforehand, and now it can. Number four, you have a maturity in less than 36 months, right? So if there is a recession and you run into maturity at that time, whether it's leverage or interest rate, it could be dramatically different. Right now, the lending market is very, I would say, aggressive in terms of trying to get people into new loans. So the lending market is great actually right now. Number five, you have a quote unquote high interest rate, right? So everybody thought, they were locking in at 4.5, 4.75, 5%. And now it's 100 basis points lower. And then number six, improve your cash flow by re-amortizing. So that might mean getting a couple years interest only. That might mean going from 20 or 25-year AM on a bank loan to now 30-year AM. So those are all reasons why someone would be refinancing their multifamily property. I put on the other side, okay, should I refinance? No. And the two reasons I came up with were: number one, you plan on selling this property in less than 2 years. If you plan on selling, your hold period is not long enough. It probably does not make sense to spend the money to refi and potentially put on a tougher prepayment penalty than you currently have. And number two, your current loan, whether that's Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, has a large prepayment penalty. So a lot of people, if it's a smaller loan and your prepay plus the cost of doing the refi is too high, it probably just doesn't make sense to do the refi. So I'm going to walk through a couple case studies and talk through them because I think that's the best way to learn. Number one, Shadowood. This was a deal we closed earlier this year. The buyer bought the deal. They needed higher leverage. The rents were under market. They used a recourse bank loan. Rate was probably close to 5% on this deal 2 years ago. And then they came to us and said, look, we've raised rents 10, 15%. The value is now increased by probably close to $1.5 million, $2 million. And I want to get a longer term loan. So that we went out, got them a Freddie small balance loan, non-recourse. It was fixed, close to 4% rate. And then they had a step down prepayment. So if someone came to them and they wanted to sell the asset, it was a step down prepay, which is actually very, very competitive and low in today's market. And so that worked in almost everything that we talked about in the previous slide. So it got cash out from the value add, it got a lower interest rate, it got non-recourse, pretty much everything that you wanted. And the overall monthly payment probably was pretty close to what he was paying already, and he got close to $1.5 million in cash out. Number two, so this was a 100-unit deal that was recently listed here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And so the buyer purchased it 4 years ago. So let's say 2015, 2016, in that range, and they had to assume the loan. So they put a lot of equity down on that loan assumption. And then after 2 years, they thought, hey, let's pull out some of this equity and let's go get a new Fannie Mae loan. And so they got a new Fannie Mae loan after doing the cash out. But unfortunately, that had a yield maintenance penalty on it because of the size. And then they decided, well, after two more years, now in 2020, we're going to list it on the market. And the problem when you're only 2 years into a 10-year loan or a 12-year loan with Fannie Mae is that your prepayment penalty is very large. It is not just a step down prepay. It can be, it can be 10, 15, 20% of the loan amount as your prepay, unless someone assumes the loan, right? So let's say this property, let's say 100 units, 100 a door, $10 million. And now they offer it two ways, right? So it's 100 a door on the loan assumption. But then if you want to prepay this loan, let's say the prepay is $3 million, then it's going to be a $13 million purchase price. So they're going to offer the deal at $10 million loan assumption or $13 million on new debt. So that's the difference. It's 100 units, 100 a door versus 130,000 per unit. And that is a lot for a new buyer to overcome. Even though rates are lower and they potentially could get better leverage, that is a lot more money in terms of cost basis, in terms of purchasing this deal and doing well in this deal. And so just be careful if you do plan on holding a deal or selling it. Sorry, if you plan on selling a deal in the next 18 to 24 months, really think about the refinance strategy before doing it, as it can hamper your ability and lower your net proceeds to the seller. Case summary number three, this is a 50-unit deal here in DFW. So they actually purchased the deal 2 years ago, so 2018. They went in, did their value add. Rents are up now close to 20%, but they still have the prepay penalty of yield maintenance, and that is about 10% of the loan amount. And they plan on keeping this deal. The investors like it, and so what can they do? They can do what's called a supplemental loan. This is a second mortgage that can be taken out through Fannie Mae. The requirements on the supplemental loan is on cash out. So an existing owner cashing out equity, it's a 130 debt service coverage and 70% loan to value. If it's a new owner, right? So if they decide to sell this property, then it's 130 debt service, which is the same, but they can go up to 75%. And on both scenarios, there needs to be 5 years left to loan maturity. And so when they did this deal, I think it was a 10-year loan. And so they still have 8 years left to maturity. And so there's plenty of time to do the supplemental. But as you run closer to that 5 year, you have to watch it. And so if all this sounds good, you're thinking, all right, I got a recourse loan. I need to just refi this thing into non-recourse, sort of reset the term and the amortization. How much is it going to cost me, right? So number one, we're doing a $3.5 million loan here. And number one, 1% of the loan amount is going to be origination fee, about $10,000 for appraisal, engineering, environmental. Legal and attorney fees about $10,000, title fees about $10,000. So you're looking at about $65,000. So on this particular transaction, it was just under 2% of the loan amount to do the refi. And so as your deals get more and get larger, the third-party fees, legal fees are going to be about the same, but then the origination fee and title fee will increase. So a good rule of thumb is about 2 to 2.5% on a refi. So next steps. If you want us to take a look at your deal and say, all right, what can I get on a potential refi? What's my terms, interest rate, things like that? And is it a good idea to even do a refi? What the items we need to really analyze it are rent roll T12, address, value of the property that you think it's currently worth, your current loan and prepay, and then we'll really go through the options. We'll just sort of lay out Fannie, Freddie, bridge loans, all those different things to sort of look at refinances. And it typically takes about 60 days to get a deal refinanced. And so if you have any questions, you can reach me on my email or phone. And to see some of the recent closings, just go to texasmultifamily.com. Thanks a lot.